In 1857, the once mighty Mughal Empire did not fall in a blaze of glory. It ended with this broken figure. This is Bahadur Shah Zafar, the final emperor, under arrest. The British shipped him off to the distant shores of Burma. With that quiet exile, a dynasty that had dominated the Indian subcontinent for 330 years simply evaporated. To understand how they lost it all, we have to rewind to 1526. Back then, the Indian subcontinent lacked a centralized state. It was a massive, fractured landscape of warring kingdoms and independent territories. Into this chaos rode Babur, an outsider from Central Asia carrying the bloodline of Genghis Khan. Babur violently established the empire at the Battle of Panipat. He crushed local armies by bringing superior modern artillery and synchronized cavalry tactics. Babur proved that gunpowder could seize Indian territory. But reigning over a vast, highly diverse subcontinent for over 3 centuries requires a completely different mechanism of power. The survival of the Mughal state depended entirely on how they built that power, and ultimately how they dismantled it themselves. This chart lays out the core problem faced by Babur's grandson Akbar when he took the throne in 1556. He was leading a tiny foreign Islamic minority attempting to govern a massive Hindu majority. Forced conversion or continuous military suppression would have guaranteed endless rebellion. Akbar abandoned that approach entirely. He adopted absolute religious tolerance, making his most significant move by abolishing the discriminatory jizya tax that non-Muslims were forced to pay. Rather than deploying armies to destroy powerful local factions like the Rajput warrior class, Akbar invited them to the table. He forged strategic political marriages and offered lucrative military alliances to his former rivals. This organizational chart illustrates his masterstroke, the Mansabdari system. It was a massive administrative framework where diverse regional leaders, whether they were Central Asian elites, local Hindus, or Rajputs, were all assigned formal ranks, salaries, and military responsibilities under one unified imperial command. Akbar committed so deeply to bridging the cultural divide that he even attempted to found his own syncretic faith. He called it the Din-e-Ilahi, a religion designed to blend elements of Islam, Hinduism, and local traditions. By turning regional rivals into invested stakeholders, Akbar built the empire's internal stability. He transformed a hostile foreign occupying force into an accepted, localized superpower. Because Akbar secured the internal borders, the empire avoided bleeding money on domestic insurgencies. Between 1605 and 1658, that era of peace generated a staggering economic surplus, starting under the reign of his son, Jahangir. Jahangir, guided heavily by his politically brilliant wife, Nur Jahan, poured those resources into an explosion of arts, literature, and highly sophisticated court culture. His successor, Shah Jahan, then weaponized that unimaginable wealth into stone. He commissioned massive, imposing structures, like the Red Fort, to physically project state power across the continent. The peak of this architectural golden age produced the Taj Mahal. Every arch and marble facade in these monuments was meticulously designed to project absolute divine authority to anyone who saw them. The sheer scale of this wealth created a dangerous illusion of invincibility. The administration appeared untouchable, masking the reality that the entire financial system relied entirely on the fragile social contract Akbar had engineered decades earlier. That contract was shredded by Aurangzeb. After violently seizing the throne in 1658 by defeating his own brothers, Aurangzeb brought a brutal shift in governing philosophy to the capital. He systematically dismantled the inclusive policies that held the empire together. Aurangzeb enforced strict religious orthodoxy across the state and deliberately reinstated the hated jizya tax on his non-Muslim subjects. Aurangzeb was obsessed with expansion, pushing borders deep into South India. But this line graph reveals the expansion carried a fatal cost. These unwinnable campaigns dragged on for decades, requiring massive troop deployments that completely drained the royal treasury. At the exact moment the state needed resources the most, Aurangzeb's exclusionary policies alienated the local factions the military relied upon. Former regional allies, tired of religious taxes and strict decrees, turned into bitter, armed enemies. By trading internal stability for sheer square mileage, Aurangzeb achieved the largest territorial footprint in Mughal history, while paradoxically engineering the state's maximum vulnerability. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, his successors inherited an empty bank account and a continent consumed by massive, simultaneous rebellions. Alienated groups like the Marathas, the Sikhs, and the Jats took up arms against the state. Back in the capital, the imperial court paralyzed itself. A series of vicious, short-lived succession wars tore the central leadership apart from the inside. With the military scattered and the leadership distracted, the northern frontier was left largely defenseless. Persian and Afghan invaders easily marched across the border, raiding cities and looting the remaining wealth. The ultimate scavenger was the British East India Company. They stepped smoothly into this massive power vacuum, exploiting the fractured continent and systematically swallowing the territory piece by piece. Which brings the timeline back to the failed rebellion of 1857. It was the final gasp of an already dead state, resulting in the British officially dissolving the Mughal dynasty. The 330-year arc of the Mughals leaves a clear historical ledger. Military force can conquer a territory, but embracing diversity and integrating locals sustained their golden age. Abandoning that formula for strict orthodoxy guaranteed their destruction.